Hello everyone, how you doing today? Thought I'd take a look at the Bastard CV and get it kind of done up. Um, at least some thoughts in mind on things to do with it. This time without rebuilding the hull and changing it into some other ship. So I thought I would start out with this front area over here, and here, let me turn on some symmetry real quick here, and I go through, and my first plan is to kind of make this a little bit different. So I'm just going to do a one-to-one block replace on some of these blocks right now so I can kind of get the angle the way I'd like to see it here. So I'm going to get rid of like this row of blocks, and then we're going to hop into, I'm thinking this angle set here. So this corner half A3 medium. Slap in one of those, and then I'm going to go to the next step up from that, which is slice corner D. But rather than going to the full block here, which is cut corner C, I'm going to just switch that over to a ramp A now, which matches that same angle. And I'll just run that straight back. Now on the front, I'm going to try to match the same angle here. I'm going to get rid of those blocks. And as you can definitely tell too, this ship has a double hull too, which is pretty cool. And let's see. Oh, I'm going to have to put that small one back in place here real quick. And we'll just run some standard ramp blocks up there. Now we've got this one like full block gap here, but I think rather than putting in a full block, I'm going to just try to put in a little bit of something here. So I'm going to take this this wedge block here and angle it so there's a little bit of a indent right before the turret. I think could add just a, I don't know, just one of those weird little things. Now in texturing this, what I typically do with textures is I try to put in an occasional texture light and then just try to make everything kind of work. So I'm going to start out with some kind of texture light. So on this, maybe I'll throw in one of these. And then maybe over here, some kind of vent or something, just to kind of break it up. On these blocks, they don't texture very well at all, and they're kind of at an angle. But in this case, I found that this can kind of work, this particular texture here, because it's got a straight line through the middle of it, so it kind of lines up end to end that way. And at this point, let's just try to get in a little something here too. Maybe like some of these kind of going up and to that, and maybe some like of that texture right behind there. So that's the one area. Now color-wise, this is pretty much mostly red. Let me see what shade of red that is. Looks like the darker red here. So I'm going to kind of follow that through a little bit, but I'm starting to think on ways to play with the paint a little bit too, keeping some colors. So I'm going to do this side area here again in red. But I'm thinking what I'm going to try to do here is do this other area in black. Now typically, since we've had a customizable color palette, I typically modify the colors or make my own colors with most builds, and maybe I'll do that here too, or just change these colors around just a little bit, and I'll show you why. One sec here. Alright, so there's that new part. Play with the colors. One thing I want to do, I was going to try to mute this red a little bit. So what I want to do is take the saturation down on it some. I found that this looks a little bit more realistic typically in game. But I don't want it any brighter or anything. I just kind of want to have it a little bit more muted versus the stock colors, but a lot of times it takes me a little while to get that figured out. And I might change it again. But anyway, we'll keep that there, and I'm going to do similar to the black. I'm going to make the black actually not as black, but it's still going to be dark. I do this as well, because I think the straight black just looks a little too black, like it doesn't look realistic anymore, essentially. Alright. So we did that there. Now the side part here, I'm going to just try to leave these blocks and texture it differently. So again, I think I'm going to try to get in a couple strips like here, maybe, and maybe something like that in the middle, but let's get some kind of extra texture in there. Maybe some kind of console thing or something like that. Alright. So this row of blocks here too, it kind of thinking if these were angled a little bit more, again a 1-to-1 block change might benefit it a bit. So I think coming off from that same part there, I'm going to do a similar setup, just have these blocks at a different angle, and this block is a little thick for that. So I'm going to try going to the really thin ones right now and seeing if there is a solution using those. I think there might be. Or not. No, actually I'm starting to think there isn't. Yeah, I could do that, but then I'm not going to match that angle. Ah, okay. Well, go back to this again. We'll just start that right up here then too. And do the same general thing. Oh, that's... I want it to line up there. Okay, we'll go here then. And then rather than full blocks here, there'll just be some kind of wedge blocks like this. Now we could transition this back block in so it fits back here like that as well if we wanted to. Same idea there, and yeah, throw in something again to add a little textureness to it. Maybe something like that. And coloring it. Not sure if I like my red I got going on here. Actually, I don't think I do like it. That's why I'm complaining about it. Might have to pick another color here. Alright. Just little subtle changes like that. Now what I'm trying to do is trying to keep a consistency on all the edge corners and angles on the ship. Now a lot of these are round. I usually try to keep the kind of more following the same theme. Now right here, to me it kind of looks like, although that kind of could look cool depending on how it's used, to me it kind of looks like this block is just rotated the wrong way. But maybe that was probably intentional, but I'm going to just basically switch it around so it fits the same block, but just switch it around that way so it kind of lines up and you don't have that gap here. And we'll just color that back in. Alright, so now on this area here, got kind of a transition here where you go into like a full block on the front and it doesn't really match that block. So let's try to do something with this area so these things line up a little bit better. So I'm going to get rid of that for now, and we're going to, before it gets here, I'm going to try to have this set of blocks kind of plan on it. In other words, expand out so it meets up a little bit better once it does get to this area. So I might have to go back a couple blocks that way and basically start to build it up and see how that comes out. Alright, so now that gives us an opportunity to use a different transition block. If you wanted to keep the round there, we could go in here and grab one of these ramp round connector. There's a left or right side of these, which would fit in that gap there. So that kind of lines that up. So now with me and lines, I don't like to see the jagged lines unless they meet up or look like they're doing something, like a actual body panel kind of thing or something. So I usually mute a lot of those out by just a flat texture. Alright, so here we've got an awful lot of the same textures in the same area. That's something else I want to change a little bit here too. Is again, maybe try to sneak in a texture light here. Oh, this is actually a different color here. Interesting. Interesting. It blends in pretty well. What color is that? This color? This color. Okay, so it's a brown here. Let's just run that all the way up to here for now. Or should it be black again? We'll see. Could be a lot of different ways. Alright, so now I've got this angle here, and I kind of screwed up the inside part of it there because I changed the other blocks. So I'm going to get rid of those three for now. Just dump in a full block here, and wouldn't mind keeping the curve there. I think that could look alright. And let's try to make these look like there's something else, some other kind of part. Let's try something like that. And now, a ship like this, I think could really, it's got, well, obviously it had some brown in that area. I did not see it a whole lot more brown in other parts of the ship, but I believe there probably is. But I'm kind of wondering, okay, so we've got, this is more or less a dark shade, and so is this. If we had a color that was lighter toned, almost a gray, but that in the mix, I think that could kind of bring everything out a little bit more. So let's try that, but this is too light. So what I'm going to want to do now is I'm going to take this gray. I will use a color that hopefully isn't used on the ship, and I'll make a darker tone of it that I think could fit in a little bit better with the other colors. Something like that. All right. Now, this part here. Let's do something in front of these turrets. I think I'm going to try to keep the, well, let's change this around just a little bit here. And, okay, so we got a round there, and we've got round here. So I'm going to get rid of one of the round edges. We'll keep this one here, and we'll do a little bit of transitioning, I think, or try. So, maybe not that one. Let's go with this again. And on the sides here, let's match that in with these guys. like that. Okay, so on the front of the turret, let's try this block. I happen to like this block quite a bit too. I like these little ridges that stick up, I guess. I'm going to put in like 3 of those. And then in the center, I'm just going to run the standard wedge. And now we've got that little bit of gap there. Adding this, what I would look at is kind of like fine little detail, like these are separate little metal panels that kind of stick out, maybe armor plating or something like that. And we'll kind of texture this part up a little bit. On these sides, there's not much that's going to texture on these things, so I'm not even going to bother trying. Again, maybe try to get in a couple of vents or something up here. I try not to repeat too much of the same texture in the same areas. And maybe another texture light there, and get rid of some of the stupid or the jaggy lines from the blocks there. All right. Kind of get the idea on what I'm doing, I think, at this point in time. I'm just kind of like going over a lot of the corners and transitions right now, and just trying to get those so they're a little bit smoother, basically. But the idea of like exploring different colors too, or having like a 2 or 3 tone color system on here, I think is pretty cool too. Fact here, so I'm going to just paint all those that way. Now, one thing I'm kind of doing a little bit wrong too is the texture lights I typically would want on lighter surfaces where they don't stick out very good on dark surfaces. So I may move some of those around yet, but I just want to kind of come up with the scheme here first. So we've got these black lines up here, and I wouldn't mind getting more black onto this as well. I'm kind of wondering if I did this a little wrong, and maybe if we had like a row of black that kind of came out here and went down the back of the ship. It's not going to jive very well because the other turrets row off though, and I can't color this especially if I'm on full block mode, but I won't be able to shade this in correctly on one of the 2 sides if I try it that way. I don't know. Let's just try it anyway. Maybe, rather than going all the way back, we'll have like a sideways stripe that goes off this way, like that. Alright. So on the decals in this area, oops, just make that just a stripe. Okay. Thinking about just kind of changing the idea around a little bit, and instead making some kind of squares or something. Maybe one on each side. Of course, one side's going to be all kind of screwed up there. Now here, let's try something different. How about maybe some little dot thingies in some kind of formation. Like that. Turn off symmetry and fix the backwards ones over here. Alright, so that part is a little bit more tweaked out. Let's try to get a bit of texture in here too. Maybe, I like this texture because I can run it in like a line, and it colors well, and lines up well typically. So you'll see a lot of builds that'll have occasional line of this. I try not to do too much in the same area of the same thing, but just a little bit of that surface mix up, I think, can make a lot of difference. So, and also, yeah, all these turrets work too. I don't really want to add blocks or anything on the top side over here because that'll interfere with the turrets firing. So, and they're set up right how they are right now, so I don't want to touch that. Alright, so the next area over here. What I really like to do is get more of a angle in here. Trying to preserve all the turrets that are there, not interfere with the down thrusters. The angle that I think I'm going to have to use the same angle that's here, so a 45. I'd like to do a 22.5, but I don't think I have the space available to bring that out far enough this way to do that. So this build also uses quite a bit of curves to it, so I'm going to try a curve on this one. A little bit on the sides here like that. You know what? I'm going to have to extend that forward, I think, if I'm going to try to fit in what I want to do. So what I mean by that is I'm going to go one block row forward, and then never mind, hold on a second. We're going to go back, just put in a standard 45. I got symmetry off. I always forget to turn that back on. Alright. Now, up over here, got an idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the alt one of these that has the two edges on it, and run that on those two positions. And then try something really crazy and get into this particular wall slope 3-corner block. Very weird block. I found some interesting uses for it sometimes. Nah, never mind. That's not going to do the trick either. What about a thin angled block over that can match that angle? I'm kind of wondering how it would look if it was kind of tucked in a little bit on the front here. But you know what? I'm going to have to switch this around if I want it to line up. I mean, really switch it around. Let's go with that then. Okay. And this could present an interesting little opportunity to add a little jaggy or something here. So I've been using a lot of thin blocks in builds, more and more so as I keep on doing new stuff. I definitely like them because you get they're finer and you get that higher level of detail, I think, overall. Or especially if you go over some other areas with them. I'll try to get a little of that into this ship here too. Right now, I'm going to take some of these new blocks, and I'm sure a lot of these blocks probably weren't even available when this ship was built either. I run in the same thing on my older ships. I don't know. It's a little bit of a change there, but I kind of like it. Kind of tucks those thrusters away a little bit. And let's see. Let's do a little bit of that again. And do you want any other kind of things in here? I guess that's fine. Front. Get rid of a couple of those. that. One on the bottom. How about we just make it easy and run some of those? Alright, so here, top row, I think I'm gonna go with some of that. And maybe pop in a couple of those, get that smoothed out. And then I'm going to try to black these out so it kind of looks like a scoop, like a hood scoop or something on a car, I think. Let's try to tone that with maybe a different color there. On the edges here, I typically use a few different textures, but a lot of times this, just because it lines up properly to the thin block edge, typically. And let's try to switch this back to black then on the inside portion and the front edge of it. But we'll keep a little dash of red in on the inside there. All right. All right. So here, don't like the square edge here. And I don't like the all the repetitiveness of the same texture around the area. So I think most of it will stay though. So first thing I'm going to do is kind of go over some of this here and get rid of probably a lot of these for now, or most. And clean up some of that. Get rid of a lot of the lines that just don't look like they make much sense. Alright, so this is actually done in that brown as well. Wonder if we did like a color change here. Let me what if that actually used a strip of that gray? And all these colors can be altered, of course, too. Probably will, to blend in a little bit better. Here, do we want that red or black? How about red here? How about black on the turret? Alright, so here, so obviously because of the retractables, the solid blocks have to stay out to this edge here. So you can't really mess with that too much, but I am going to try to angle out a little bit more here. And transition that into the other part so it kind of matches the same block on the front side as well. And then here, do something like that. Now we got the hangar door right behind here, so there's not a lot of room to work with, but enough. And I'm gonna change this around just a little bit here and try to add in some kind of block detail stuff with maybe using the smaller version of that and then a half block. So you got a couple little indents there. And get a couple textures in there. Clean up some of this stuff. let's see, maybe try to slop in a texture light here. And I don't know, something, maybe a vent over there. Huh. Weird how it's like different on both sides. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that, a lot of little things here and there that don't work very well with the symmetry on. Just got to be mindful of that and have to look over the other side once you're done with one side of it and get them to match. That's the thing. How about if that was red and we just had the gray right only that 3 block area there. And we'll go dark on this inside part. Make that kind of come out a little bit. Not sure about my little dash of gray either. I'm trying something. Alright, so we did a few modifications across the top. You know, I'm going to do something else too a minute. I'm going to color the turrets all the same shade. I think that could help a little bit too. Alright, and it's dying for something up here. Maybe how about that? Alright. So on this side over here, now this is problematic anyway. It looks like we have a what is this? Looks like a mining drill, but I have a feeling that these blocks would block it that are here, so it wouldn't actually work. If I'm wrong on that, please correct me though. But the way these things seem to work, that like it looks like line of sight it would work, but since it looks at most of these blocks as full blocks, I think it just is, it's buried, basically. So the only way we can really fix that is to get rid of that row of blocks right there. The other one here looks okay though. And we can't really alter those blocks because we got the turrets, more retractable turrets there as well. So we're just going to have to kind of leave that row empty. So I'm going to try something like running this down the inside through this area. Let's try a little dark again here. And also color that turret the same. Maybe just leave that whole row black. And the inside part of it. Alright, so this angle here, I think probably should meet up to this. And I see there's some transition going on there, which wasn't bad. But I'm wondering how that would work. Or have even a slopier angle because we got the room to fit it. So that and that and that. Yeah, I still keep eyeballing this, whether or not I want to have that other color in there or not. The more I look at it, the more I think, no. Probably look better just that way. just wondering if I shouldn't try to match those stripes like that. Alright, so on this side here, similar stuff, basically texture changes, I think. This particular vent texture that's on here, I do use that quite a bit, but I try to use it in the smallest possible way. Like a vent occasionally, and if I could fit that on the surface of a half block, which lines up pretty good, I typically do that. Alright. One thing I don't like about the vent texture, even though I do use it, like I said now and then, is it's got that white line syndrome too, where you start looking at it from a distance, and then you see all the white in it, where it almost doesn't look like it's even the color you set it to. That's kind of a problem I have with it too, but you know, in small doses, it seems to work all right, especially on interior stuff. Why I use this texture so much is that it actually colors properly, and you don't have that white line look from a distance. Same thing with this texture. And trust me, I would so like to find ways to get around using these textures, but I like them because of the squareness of them, because they line up to the edges, and they color properly. So those are the big issues that I kind of look at when selecting what textures I want to use for stuff. There are other patterns and textures that I do like, but when they mess you up all the time with the white line stuff, it doesn't look good later on. Close up, it's usually not so bad, but at a distance, so that's why I don't use them. I'm just going to go with black around this whole gun here, but we'll keep the rest of it red. Alright, so we made our way through a bunch of it. I'm going to scrap the gray idea too. I don't think I'm fitting that in very good, or maybe I just got the weird tones of colors right now where it doesn't blend in very good. Alright, so over here, looks like we got a few different angles that kind of are all kind of coming together, but don't necessarily join up very good. So I'm going to try to unify that so they're kind of all the same type of angles. Something like that there, and actually those here, I think we can blend that right into this. Oh, not exactly, no. But I'm willing to, well, yeah, let's make it work anyway. So what we're going to do is meet that same angle, but start it way up here. And then I can just run these straight back to line up to that part. So as to those vents I was just talking about, one of the places I typically would look at putting in vents is like a half block, for instance. Like right there, you could put in a vent like that. It reduces its size, I think, and adds a bit of detail. And by itself, yeah, from a distance, you're still going to get the white line look, but it's not overpowering, basically. And a lot of times I'll color the vents a different shade too. Like we could just color that red, but say I did actually do it with this gray, or you know what? This gray isn't dark enough, I think. That's my problem with it. I'm going to darken that up some more and do it like that. It gives it that little bit of color contrast. You could apply that to other things too, but it may or may not look good. Like that one, too much, but just the gray vent being a different color, I think, is helpful. Alright, so up here I'm going to do the same kind of pattern I did in a lot of other places. This is going to line up quite the same. Let's do it like that then, and make a couple of those in there. I think that, well, trying to get in some black. Maybe two-tone it differently, and let's have a black row there, and a red there, so it kind of looks like this is together. Actually, it makes me wonder if that shouldn't be red then. I don't know. Either way, I guess works. Okay, so over here we've got a bunch of different things. And I'm going to try to smooth all this out as well. So I want to find a unifying angle to start with, something that will meet up to where it needs to go and then angle throughout this area back into the ship. So I'm going to try to use this block group for that. And I want to start with the biggest block in the back. Actually, I'm going to pull that in here. And let's just see where it ends up at. Nah, I think I'm going in too fast. Never mind. Put that back to a full block here and start it here then. And just kind of ripping into this a little bit there. Okay, so it's, yeah, we're at a 45 main angle up top too, so this should work. We'll have to chew away quite a bit of these. And then let's take that angle and meet it up with that angle. Which isn't going to work with this particular block group, but if I do a transition and go to this set, it will. We can fill that in and match that there. So on the upper row, okay, so we've got another weapon there. And so we don't want to block that at all. But if we maintain the 45 degree angle there, I think we'll be okay. Okay, and we got round transitioning to that there. We can leave all that. clean up a lot of the texture line stuff. Try to leave some. One thing I don't know if I like though is I got this where it kind of it's following that slope, but then it kind of like jumps out right here just for a little bit. So I'm thinking I'm gonna trim that off a bit. You know, on this top row too, I think it could look kind of cool if I actually use this alt block here. Like that. And you get that little, you could either put in the little corner pieces that make it all smooth, or you could leave it the way it is. And then it kind of looks like some kind of armor or something over the hull. And something like that there. Here. Let's go with the dark on that. I kind of see some of the changes I'm making, and yeah, some of it's block work, some of it's texture work, things like that. I'm not trying to get too far into it. I'm just trying to kind of keep a lot of these angles and transitions kind of uniform. Sometimes simpler than what they originally were. Do this last part, then we'll take a look at the interior a bit here. Oh, an RCS. So here, I almost kind of want to make this look like it's some separate added on part. So I'm going to round it off again on the top and match that same block here on the bottom. And this would be, oh, does this have some spotlights on it already? Oh yeah, I had them right in the center there. Could have some extra spotlights. That's a nice little opportunity to put something like that in over here. The reason why I'm saying that. But let's do that too. And I guess for now we'll actually put in some spotlights. Where are you? There you are. And we can use these angled ones that face forward. Oh, I put my block in wrong. So I've lost my textures. So now I can do that. We can put in, I don't know, maybe something like that. And maybe one of those vents back there, like some kind of intake. And since this is kind of like a separate little part at the time, I think maybe it ought to be the other color range here. Something like that. All right. You know what? Last area, last hull area I want to look at right now. basically this area wrapping around here. I'm going to do a couple different things. First thing I'm going to do is start there so I can get an angle in on these blocks here, and then try to make that angle work across the back corners of the ship, I guess. Something like that. Fairly simplistic angle, but could actually try like a color transition here too. Like for instance, let's say this is all red, kind of like it was. This row is red. This row is dark. Be something kind of like that. I don't know. Takes a while to tweak it all in and figure out what you really want. Over here it looks like the color should extend back too. It just cosmetically looks like it should. Maybe I'm getting too much black on this ship. If I do that. I like to so say you got the black here and then you've got this like other part that's in red, and it kind of makes like a separation between the two of them. I think depending on how you do it, can enhance the detail of things, or at least have more for your eyes to look at, basically. All right. Okay, well that's so far some stuff done here. I think the next part, you know, one last thing. I gotta do this. And I'll just try to do a pattern again. Fix up all the stuff I did down here too. Like that there, okay. All right, so inside. So inside is pretty much, doesn't look like a whole lot, all the parts are placed here. And one thing that's totally not needed though is like 2 gravity generators, unless each gravity generator has a particular block radius around it. 2 next to each other really accomplish nothing besides use more power. So to start with, I'm going to get rid of one of the 2. And if you use the regular multi-tool here, is it? Wait, what is this thing? Yeah, multi-tool. You can get rid of it and it won't delete it on the other side in symmetry. Is one thing. Interior-wise, I would need to do quite a bit to this, I think, to try to get all this dialed in a little bit. I guess we could try to get in some some baseline things though. Maybe some trim that can meet up to try to house in all the parts and around the edges and things. So over here, just kind of go with the 45s that are in the ship a lot. And oh yeah, we got a hangar door right there too. All right, so just trying to keep that out of the way of the hangar door. Something like that. Run a little bit of those for some decorative stuff. You could probably actually take that all the way back. Basically, I'm just trying to, I don't know, trim it up a little bit, I guess. Like putting molding up in a room or something. Actually, good spot for some texture lights. Something like that. And you know what? Yeah, so something like that. That kind of blends in all right. Maybe that texture could be swapped out. A lot of times I will use this as vents as well. Kind of alternative. All these areas, yeah. Now, one thing too that is dangerous in builds is when you have like fuel tanks. If shot, they will explode and take out nearby blocks. Not too far away, but being right next to generators. Not that these necessarily would get hit or anything, and this does have a double layered hull, but usually I try to keep these separated from themselves and other critical parts by finding other places to put them somewhere in the ship. For instance, let me grab some of the good fuel tanks here, and let's see how thick is it back here. Yeah, looks like we still got the double hull layer there. Okay, good. So maybe I'll put one, oh, that's a thruster right below there. Try to keep them away from the thrusters too. Oh, and that whole thing's a thruster. Okay, so not a lot of room here, but oh, and that's a thruster. Might be a little rougher than I thought here. So put a fuel tank there. Fuel tank there, and have block separation between them. Oh, that one's right next to a thruster too. There's just thrusters everywhere. Normally, I try to keep them away from the thrusters is the point. I don't know the ship super well, as I didn't build it myself, so I don't know exactly where all this stuff is. But that's the idea, at least. And it's a tougher thing. So now, say somehow this ship just takes excessive amount of damage and this fuel tank gets blown up, it shouldn't chain react and take out generators or other parts in the ship. But on the interior, I like going to what I typically do for interiors. I think would take me quite a long time. I'd pretty much have to like kind of build the whole area up. I'm just trying to show you like little tricks on how to accomplish that, and to try to make parts look like they're kind of embedded into the walls and everything kind of fits around them. And that's usually the game plan I almost always go for, is to try to make the parts look like they should be there, and there's spots inside the ship built to hold those parts specifically. Like one thing here too, if you're on the ground floor, this is reachable by foot, but I don't think visually it would make a lot of sense if you're on the ground there. So like with the storage, and that's another thing too, is I'm not going to know what blocks are storage blocks around here right now without like looking at them individually. Let's see, is there storage behind there? No, that's just steel too. What about below it? Oh. Oh. So this wasn't actually holding anything. So okay, so this didn't have any cargo extensions attached to it. So the base box itself will hold 8K, but with cargo extensions, typically they have to touch to this and touch to themselves. So basically, say I ran, well first I want to put that on the ground floor if possible too. So I'm going to replace a number of these blocks, and I don't care about the RCS because they're going to get wiped out anyway. And these blocks are fairly tough. In fact, the same hit points as steel. So they're not too bad. Alright, so this is a little weird too because it's kind of coming out to where the hangar door opens, but you know, that's like a full block on the side. So yeah, this is probably fine. Now keep in mind, when you're placing cargo extensions, each one of these costs CPU. If you use partial blocks for them of any type besides a full block, it's going to have reduced amount of volume that it holds, but it's still going to cost you the same amount of CPU. So as a rule, I try to, and I can't say I can always do this, it depends on the build, I try to keep these full blocks. It would be neat because I'd like to, like, honestly angle that in over here, but I will reduce the storage but use the same amount of CPU if I did that. And it depends if you're concerned with CPU or not. On this build, it's probably going to be undoubtedly a tier 4 right now. Maybe it could be made into a tier 3. I don't know. But with the amount of thrusters on it, I'd pretty much say no, it's going to be a tier 4. And then tier 4 has such a max limit on it that it's not going to matter much in the end if you use partial boxes for storage or whatnot. So then I'll pop in a controller here. And now this has 98,750 storage, and it's got the odd number because I did use some partials here. Otherwise it usually stays to like a fairly even number. We could keep on expanding these out as long as they touch the system. And if you haven't done this too much, if I try to add another controller to it, it's going to be in red and won't let me, because these are all connected to this controller, and you can't have two controllers connected to the same set of extensions. So it's not going to permit me to screw it up, basically, which is probably a good thing, I'm sure. And what are we at now? 234,000. So definitely up the storage this way. I don't like what I'm doing there, though. And who knows? I don't know exactly what I can cut into to add more storage containers. Sometimes I just try to go for that 320. In other cases, like something I'm going to show you right after this, I decided to go with a different number. Also, to try to save on CPU, like I hit 320, but did I go over? It won't tell you anything above 320. So I usually will take a block, remove it, see if it drops below 320, like it didn't. So that means I had an extra block in, wasting CPU. See, now we drop down. So then we get our exact total, no matter what size blocks you have, and I'm not using one more than I need to accomplish that. And it looks like, yeah, I did it on the other side here too. So it looks like, and this side's different right now. Alright, so that would add in a bunch of storage. Taking a look at the lift thrust on the ship, I think it can handle it too. 4 of these is probably enough to lift that with the ship. As in thruster ratios on ships that I've been building as of late, and this has changed over time, typically I like to have the most amount of thrust power for lift thrust. And let's say I had 4 lift thrusts. Well, no, let's say I had 8. For forward thrust, I would usually go with 6. For reverse thrust, usually 2 or 4, depending on how much CPU I've got. And for down thrust, not much at all. Just enough so it can go downward, basically, because you don't have to fight gravity when you're going downward for lifting stuff. Side to side thrust, I found, unless you want your, especially on the CV, to do a lot of strafing, it doesn't need much at all, because you can still turn without much in side thrusters. But the best game plan would be to try to fit some, and it doesn't need a lot, some side thrust like towards like the front or the rear of the ship. You could put them on both locations as well, but it's not necessarily needed. Case in point on that one is the more recent MCRN Pioneer. Let me find that. God, I always go so weird when I'm doing videos, just like I can't find anything. Like this one here kind of follows that model, and this is more or less developed trying to deal with CPU. As you can see here, what I was just explaining, I've got like one side thruster per side, but it's way on one axis of the ship. I don't actually have any more side thrusters anywhere on the ship, but it's far away from the center of it. Same thing, I've got 2 reverse thrusters, I've got 8 lift thrusters, 6 forward thrusters, and these down thrusters, it looks like there's a lot, but these are the smallest ones, like the 1x1x1 thrusters, where the rest of these are all the 2x1s. So these are a lot more powerful than what these are. I put 4 of these in here just to distribute them better. I ended up moving these 2 from this location to this location due to it was causing a heat issue in the farm. That was one of the patches I did on that. But anyway, that's where the ship's at right now. I could keep on trying to work on it. It'd take longer, but actually, what I think I'll do is I'll hit up the author of the ship and see if they want this version back or not. Um, as it is, most of these I would like to try to do them in a smaller amount of time, but it depends on how big the ship is and how much changes would need to take place, to really get them up there, or at least the way I like to have the ships, interiors and everything like that too. And I just like the interior here. I could, that could be a half a day project. That's how long it takes me to do most of my interiors on my ships, to try to build around all the parts, to fit the parts in right, to kind of lay it out first, and then try to do trim blocks and things around those part locations to make them feel like they belong in the ship. And then to do all the coloring and texturing and lighting and LCDs and everything else, it takes quite a long time. But anyway, hope you like the changes to it. I didn't do like a terrible amount, but just kind of worked with what was there, made quite a few little block changes, especially around a lot of the corners and things like that, to try to smooth them out a little bit. One of my philosophies too on my own ships is I try to set up like an angle set. In other words, like if I'm using this angle here, I'll, like here, I got a discrepancy on that. So like this is at this 22.5 at that angle. This starts that way, but then it goes down to a 45. So I would actually find that I would fix it on my ship. And you know what? I'm going to do it here real quick too. And the point was just to get both angles at the same, whatever that may be. And I think in the end, cosmetically, it will look better. I had the same problem with the Persis carrier that I identified when I was doing the CV2, and ended up changing like a good chunk of the hull in parts so I could match the angles that I was using. Essentially like that. So they all kind of, I don't know, it blends basically. So it doesn't stick out. And like on this ship, it had some areas that were curves and some areas that were angled. Now curve blocks, if everything was curves, it would probably look right. And if everything was angles, it would probably look right. Having the curves and the angles is tricky. In some situations that can look really good, but as in like your baseline body work, I think I would try to keep like your main seams all uniform. Like over here again too, I'd probably actually take that same slope and apply it to here. It already kind of is on the front. And then I would probably even try to make the front mesh into that as well. As in for the curve stuff, sometimes like what I typically use them for is not so much on the hull shape. Typically, it's but little things like doing this curvy chunk over here out of the blue, kind of adds in some depth and some more for your eye to see. But I usually don't use them too much for shaping of the ships. Now, I've got a couple of exceptions to that, but usually I try to go with a lot of angled stuff, and the curved stuff are just accent parts or piping or something unusual to shape. All right, well, that is that. And something I thought I would show before I moved on is over the weekend I was working on a starter space station for Excalibur's challenge. This is attempt number 3. And I think out in space over there, I've got the first attempt, which was that tree-looking thing. And then I didn't really do much with the second attempt over there. Did show it in the last video. This one, I wanted to go back to more of a basic approach because it is a starter. And it is MCRN. I wanted to get rid of a lot of the, what I typically use them for is not so much on the hull shape. Typically, it's but little things like doing this curvy chunk over here out of the blue, kind of adds in some depth and some more for your eye to see. But I usually don't use them too much for shaping of the ships. waste, I guess. Like, for instance, over here, because of the spire and all the aesthetics things I was trying to do here, it probably wouldn't make a very good starter space station because it's going to be too expensive. Too many extra blocks used to create all this. And this one, I wanted to keep that simpler and again kind of go to some form of box. Now this one was built a little bit different. I kind of started out with the interior more or less first, and I don't have any LCDs or any decoration or any of that in here, but I wanted this to start at tier 2 and be very, very upgradable to tier 3 with a lot of stuff. And I'm trying to push the storage out on it too. So this one is actually running 4 200K storage bins, so 800K storage. Would come with a couple constructors on each side. These would be upgrade slots, so you can add in 2 deconstructors, 2 furnaces, a shield. I got a spot for offline protection. There's 2 farms totaling 36 grow plots, and a little space on the one side over here where the offline protection would end up going. I don't have these areas finished off yet. And these farms are accessible via elevators on either side of the hangar door. They go up there, and they also go right up to the deck up top too. This base has 0 fluff, so no beds, no anything else in it. I don't have room for it. I got everything fitted currently except for the specialized medical equipment, and I'm trying to come up with a good solution for that. Oh, and also the place for the repair console. So I'm kind of looking into those things right now, but this would be a lot like, God, what did I call that? So the Waypoint compound. So basically you get it, and it's got a bunch of upgrade slots all over the place, and then you can add in your tier 3 blocks and a whole bunch of parts. It would remain tier 3 at that point in time. I got to work out all the details, but I think what I got going on will work. Also, it has 8 turrets on it, 4 on top, 4 on bottom. It was brought up in comments to maybe do this without defenses and build like a point defense space version like what I did for the MCRN already. And I like that idea, and I might build something, you know, like a space point defense gun setup that you could deploy around space bases. As in the core, though, one thing it was brought up, hey, put it in this like a separate box and keep it away from the base, and that sounds cool. And that's the same thing I did with some of the other buildings for MCRN, but in space, logistically speaking, it's different because it's like I'm not setting it on the ground. So that means, what do I do? I mean, do I just have some floating block out somewhere around the space station that contains the core, which I think would look weird? Or do I build some kind of shaft that comes out from the thing to hold the core a little bit away from the base? I don't know. Basically, I came to the conclusion that maybe the base just ought to defend itself and keep the core inside the base somewhere. And I did plop it in somewhere, and actually that area has a concrete around it. I tried to blend it in the best I could, but I hate using concrete for texturing purposes. I really do. It especially doesn't fit with MCRN. I can get it to kind of work with the Creel, and a little bit on the humans, but the MCRN, it doesn't match anything I've got, and so I don't like using concrete. This base currently is carbon substrate, and I also think that's too weak since it's defending itself. So I might switch it over to steel. I don't know, but it's cheaper and it's quicker to spawn and carbon substrate, and I'm not sure how much you're going to be attacked and by what in space. I think at this point in time, I think it's just drones. And with the 8 turrets, I think it would protect the base well enough, or hopefully be able to shoot down the drones before they can shoot the base. If this base had a shield, it won't really be a problem, and it would have a shield after an upgrade, but when you first spawn it, it doesn't. So, I don't know. Just thinking about all the little ins and outs of it, I want to keep it as cheap as I can. With the solar arrangement too, which I talked about in the last video, I tried something different again here, and it's got 14 solar panels rather than 15, but I was able to do them in symmetry, and I had to run 7 in a row on each side to pull that off. So I turned them up the long ways so I could at least kind of widen that area up a little bit. Again, I would absolutely like to have the solar panel count set to 16 or any interval above 16 in increments of 4. So 16, 20, 24, 28, they all work. All right, well, that's it for today. This week, next video I do want to get into is probably actually going to be a block tutorial, but I also want to get into this again too, and do a detail phase on it, trying to make it look better than what it does now. For use of blocks, decorations, decals, anything and everything to try to spiff it up. All right, see you later all.